The courtroom smelled like lemon-scented lies and old paper, like someone tried to clean up the mess but only managed to make it sterile. Cold. I sat there in a navy suit that didn't quite fit anymore. My shoulders were broader these days. From the weight of things, I guess. Or maybe from carrying the truth on my back for the last 2 years. Across from me sat Andrea, my ex-wife. Hair in a tight bun. Eyes dry and sharp as glass. She didn't glance at me. Not once. She didn't need to. The courtroom was her stage, and she'd rehearsed this script in front of every friend, therapist, and family court clerk who would listen. Beside her sat our son, Lucas, 9 years old. Freckles still dusted his nose, but the boy who used to scream, "Daddy," when I walked through the door, he was gone. This version didn't look at me, not even when they called my name. He was violent and dangerous, Andrea said, her voice smooth and rehearsed. Unstable. Emotionally manipulative. Lucas was afraid to even be in the same house. Afraid. That word cracked something inside me. Not because it was true, because I'd spent the last 2 years doing everything to make sure nothing about that word belonged to me. I was the guy who read bedtime stories with funny voices, who let him eat cereal at midnight during thunderstorms because he was scared, who drove 40 minutes out of the way just to get the dinosaur toy he wanted because I promised I'd get it. And now I was the villain in her made-for-TV drama. The judge, a man with tired eyes and an immovable expression, turned toward me. "Mr. Langford, do you have any questions for the witness?" My lawyer shifted beside me, ready to speak. But I raised my hand and stood. My voice cut through the stale air like a razor. "Just one," I said, pulling out my son's phone, the one he left in my truck last weekend. The one she didn't know he had with him when I dropped him off. I held it up. "I'd like to play a recording." "From last Tuesday." Andrea flinched, just a flicker. Her spine stiffened. Lucas's head jerked up. His eyes met mine for the first time in months, wide, startled, scared. The bailiff looked toward the judge, who gave a slow nod. "Proceed." I walked to the speaker and tapped the screen. The courtroom was silent enough to hear the click of the file opening. Then it began. Andrea's voice, clear and unmistakable. "If you cry at court, Lucas, the judge will think he scared you. That's what we want, okay? He has to look dangerous." Murmurs erupted. The court reporter froze, then scrambled to catch up with the words. Lucas's mouth parted slightly, like he forgot how to breathe. Lucas, whispering. "But I don't want to lie about Daddy. Andrea. He deserves it. After everything he put me through. Don't you want to live with me full time? No more stupid back and forth?" "Lucas. I guess." "Andrea. Then you do what I say. You look sad. You look scared. And whatever you do, don't talk about that weekend at the lake. Not one word. Got it?" I stopped the playback there. That was enough for now. I didn't need to shove the knife in deeper. I just needed everyone in this courtroom to see the blade. Andrea's mouth opened, but nothing came out. The color drained from her face. And Lucas, he was crying. But not the kind of crying she rehearsed with him. This wasn't fear. It was guilt. It was relief. Like the weight of every forced lie had finally fallen off his shoulders. The judge leaned forward. "I think we need a recess," he said, voice low but firm. But I wasn't done. "With all due respect, Your Honor," I said, "this recording isn't the only one." I met Andrea's gaze then. For the first time since the divorce. She didn't look powerful now. She looked exactly like what she was cornered. And I'd like the court to hear everything. Recess was declared, and the courtroom emptied like someone had pulled the fire alarm. Andrea bolted toward her attorney, whispering so aggressively she might have bitten his ear off if she leaned any closer. Her perfect composure? Gone. That carefully curated facade she'd been painting for months, maybe years, cracked the second her voice told the truth instead of her lies. Meanwhile, I just sat down. Calm. Collected. I wasn't here to scream. I didn't throw chairs or throw hands like she always insinuated in her little, concerned mother monologues. I just let the tape play. It's funny how silence becomes your weapon when the facts are loud enough. Lucas stayed in his seat during the break. His court-appointed guardian, a woman named Miss Hendricks, stood protectively near him, arms folded. She looked like she had just watched a car crash in slow motion. She hadn't said a word to me up to that point. But now, she gave me a look. It wasn't pity. It was recognition. "Do you have more of those recordings?" she asked, low and firm. I nodded. For weeks' worth. Not just her voice. Phone calls. Video clips. Even a few of Lucas talking to his teacher about what she made him say. She blinked, then said, "Good. Don't delete a thing." And then, For the first time since this hell began, I had an ally inside that building. When court resumed, the judge's voice had a new tone. No more bored routine. This was a man whose courtroom had just been lied to publicly, and he wasn't thrilled about it. I will be ordering an immediate review of the audio presented by Mr. Langford, he said, and an investigation into the potential coaching of a minor in a custody hearing. Andrea didn't look up. Her lawyer did all the talking now, claiming the recording lacked context, that it was unverified, that maybe the voice wasn't even hers. Right. Because I downloaded a celebrity impersonator to mimic her guilt. The judge wasn't buying it. He ordered all phones submitted for review. Both hers and mine. I slid mine across the table without blinking. Her? She hesitated. I've misplaced it, she stammered. The judge raised one brow. Then I suggest you find it, Mrs. Langford. Because if your son's voice was manipulated, as your attorney claims, we need to verify that. But here's the kicker. She didn't know I had the backup. Yeah. The tech guy she underestimated, me. I'd synced Lucas's phone to an old cloud account the night he left it in my truck. The voice memos, the texts, even deleted files, all backed up, all timestamped. So while she tried to figure out how to spin this, I was ready to burn the whole fake empire she built with one login screen. The next audio clip played on a court-approved speaker. This one wasn't even hidden. Lucas had recorded it himself. Lucas, softly. Why'd I have to say that stuff about Dad? He didn't hit me. Andrea. Because no one listens to women unless we make them scared, sweetie. That's just how the world works. Besides, he was never a good husband. Why should he be a father? You could have heard a gavel drop. Her own words. A confession, not screamed in anger, not flung in an argument. Just calmly spoken poison, spoon-fed to a kid who didn't know any better. The guardian ad litem scribbled furiously. The judge called for both attorneys to approach. I couldn't hear everything they said, but I caught phrases like motion to review custody immediately and temporary suspension of maternal visitation. And just like that, the tide turned. Andrea sat back down like her legs might give out. I think she finally realized that this wasn't family court anymore. This was consequence court, and she was the exhibit. After the hearing adjourned for the day, Lucas approached me slowly. Hesitant, like I might disappear if he blinked. I thought you'd be mad at me, he whispered. I knelt down. Mad? No, buddy. I'm proud of you. He frowned. Even though I said those things? You were scared, and you didn't have a choice. But you told the truth now. That matters. He looked down. I didn't want to lie. I missed you. That cracked me. Not in public. Not visibly. But something behind my ribs just gave way. I hugged him, and for the first time in over a year, my son hugged me back without flinching. That night, back in my half-empty apartment, I poured a whiskey and sat by the window. No TV. No music. Just me and the sound of real justice starting to wake up. Andrea had spent 2 years painting me as the villain. But she made one mistake. She forgot who taught Lucas how to use the voice recorder in the first place. The next morning, I walked into court with 2 things, a worn leather folder full of evidence, and a comm that wasn't there yesterday. Andrea, on the other hand, looked like she hadn't slept. She wore the same blouse from the day before. Hair pulled tight, makeup heavier, like she was trying to paint confidence over panic. But she couldn't mask the tremble in her hand when she picked up her coffee. We sat across from each other, this woman I once promised a future to. Now she couldn't even look me in the eye. Her lawyer did all the speaking, again, trying to halt the review process, citing emotional trauma, child distress, and potential illegal recordings. Please. They weren't illegal. Lucas had every right to record his own conversations, especially when those conversations were being weaponized to rip him away from me. The judge, God bless this man, was having none of it. Given the content of the recording, he said, adjusting his glasses, the court has sufficient cause to temporarily suspend primary custody from the mother, pending a psychological review and a full investigation. I didn't smile. Not then. Not there. But inside, I was steady. Because justice isn't a punchline, it's a process. And today, the gears finally moved. After court, Andrea followed me into the hallway. Alone. She waited until my lawyer stepped into a phone call, then slid up beside me. You set me up, she hissed. I didn't flinch. You set him up, I replied. You used our son like a chess piece. I was protecting him. No, I said, voice low and even. You were punishing me. For what? Leaving? Not loving you the way you imagined I should. You abandoned us. I turned and looked her full in the face for the first time in over a year. No. I survived you. There's a difference. Her mouth opened like she was ready to spit something vile, but she didn't. She saw something in my face. Something new. I wasn't the man she walked out on. I wasn't apologizing anymore. Then she tried a different weapon. If you think you're going to turn him against me, I will bury you in litigation. I'll have every penny you've got frozen by the time this is over. Good luck, I said. Because you just threatened me. In a courthouse. And guess what? I pulled out my phone and tapped stop on the voice recorder. You're not the only one who knows how to play dirty. That night, Lucas stayed with me. It was awkward at first. The kind of silence that settles between people who've been used as weapons by someone else. But I let it be. I didn't push. I just made dinner, grilled cheese, his favorite, and let the TV play one of those superhero shows he used to love. Around 9 p.m., he came and sat beside me on the couch. Quiet. Is Mom going to jail? He asked. No, I said, gently. But she's going to have to answer for what she did. Just like anyone else. Will she be mad at me? That one hurt. Because I knew the answer, and it wasn't simple. She might be, I said. But that's not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. Telling the truth isn't wrong. Lucas looked down at his socks, then leaned against my side. I missed you, Dad. That one broke me in half. And stitched me back together. The next day, I met with my lawyer. We've got momentum, she said. But don't get cocky. She's still got joint custody for now. And if she plays the sympathy card hard enough, she could slow this down. I nodded. Let her. Also, we need to talk about him. I didn't need a name. I already knew. James Tolliver. The man she was seeing. The one she swore was just a coworker. The same man who picked Lucas up from school more than once. The man she introduced as Uncle Jamie before the ink on our custody agreement was even dry. What about him? I asked. He's got a sealed record, my lawyer said. But I know a guy. Gonna take some digging. I leaned forward. Then dig. Because something about that man had always made my skin crawl. It wasn't jealousy. It was instinct. And I learned the hard way when that feeling shows up. You don't ignore it. That evening, Lucas and I played cards. We laughed. I let him win a few rounds, then made him earn the rest. He told me about school, about a kid who ate glue, about a science project where he accidentally set a marshmallow on fire. And when he finally fell asleep, arms wrapped around the same beat-up stuffed bear I gave him when he was 3. I sat on the edge of the bed and made a promise. Out loud. To the quiet room. To myself. I will never let anyone use you again. Not your mother. Not a boyfriend. Not the system. You're not a pawn, Lucas. You're my son. And you deserve better. 2 days after Lucas came to live with me, my lawyer's contact finally came through. James Tolliver. Mr. I'm just helping Andrea through a hard time. Mr. Kids love me. Mr. Uncle Jamie. Turns out Uncle Jamie had a hobby, one he kept just far enough from the courts to stay clean but close enough to stink. 2 prior allegations, my lawyer said, sliding the folder across the desk. Never charged, but both involved inappropriate conduct around minors. Both were sealed. My jaw clenched. Why sealed? Parents didn't press charges. Settled in arbitration. Confidentiality agreements. You know the drill. Yeah, I did. You scream into the void, and if you've got enough money or influence, the world plugs its ears. But here's the thing about whispers, they leave echoes. And I just found one. Does Andrea know? If she doesn't, she's blind, my lawyer said. And if she does, she's something worse. That night, I tucked Lucas in and watched him fall asleep with the kind of peacefulness kids shouldn't have to earn back. I didn't tell him what I knew. Not yet. He'd already carried too many truths that weren't his to hold. But I did make a call. Not to Andrea. Not to James. To his first accuser's father. Took me an hour to track the guy down. Another 15 minutes before he picked up. Yeah, he said. Gruff. Suspicious. I introduced myself. Gave him the short version. And then I asked the only question that mattered. Did he hurt your daughter? There was silence on the line. Then a slow, bitter exhale. We couldn't prove it, he said. But yeah, he did. I didn't ask for details. He didn't offer any. But he gave me a name. A lawyer who didn't sign the confidentiality deal. And that's all I needed. Now it wasn't just about custody. It was about protection. I sent an email that night to the court-appointed guardian, the judge, and my lawyer. Attached were the records. The sealed reports. The affidavits. The statements. All of it. I ended the email with one sentence. This is the man currently living with Lucas's mother and listed as a backup pickup for school. Less than 24 hours later, I got a call. Emergency hearing, my lawyer said. They're moving fast. Good. Because they should have moved to hell of a lot faster the first time he was accused. In court, Andrea looked like a woman standing in the center of a crumbling stage. She wore white. White. Like this was some Hallmark holiday reunion instead of a reckoning. James didn't show up. Coward. But his name was everywhere, in files, in police notes, in whispered warnings from 2 separate counties. And when the judge spoke, his voice carried weight. Until further notice, he said, James Tolliver is prohibited from any contact with the minor, Lucas Langford. Mrs. Langford's unsupervised visitation is suspended pending investigation. Andrea's face cracked right there in real time. She turned to her lawyer, whispered furiously, shook her head like the truth was something she could outrun. And then she looked at me. But I didn't look away. Because this wasn't revenge. This was righteous. This was the system doing what it should have done the first time someone cried wolf, and another let the wolf in through the back door. Later that day, Lucas asked me a question that froze me where I stood. Why doesn't Mom like you anymore? I didn't lie. I think she's mad at me. For not doing what she wanted. Like lying. Yeah, I said. Exactly like that. He was quiet for a moment, then nodded and went back to his Legos. Just like that. But for me, that question stuck in my ribs like a splinter. Because he shouldn't have to ask it. And he wouldn't have, if she hadn't tried to rewrite the story and hand it to him like gospel. But not anymore. Not with me here. Not while he sleeps under my roof. That night, I stood outside in the cold, sipping coffee and staring at the horizon. Not looking for hope. Just watching the sun set on the old version of me. The man who begged for fairness. The man who kept his head down. The man who thought the truth would protect him if he just waited long enough. He's gone. And in his place? Me. Sharper. Quieter. Meaner. Maybe, but only when necessary. The kind of man who doesn't just fight back. The kind who wins. They say narcissists don't break down. They unravel. But Andrea? She didn't even get that grace. She went for broke. Fast. Loud. And with the grace of a swan dive into concrete. The week after the hearing, her lawyer withdrew. Filed an official motion. Irreconcilable differences in strategy. Translation? She stopped listening, and he wasn't about to go down with her ship. I would have felt bad for her. Once. A long time ago. Before she turned my son into a puppet and handed the strings to a predator. Now, I just watched. She tried a new move, of course. They always do when the performance flops. She emailed me. No subject. Just one line. You're destroying everything we built. Everything we built? Andrea hadn't built anything. She just picked out the curtains while I paid the mortgage. She planned Instagram-worthy vacations while I picked up extra shifts to fund them. She played the victim while I rebuilt our son's confidence piece by piece in the dark. I didn't respond. Let her stew in silence. Instead, I focused on Lucas. He laughed more now. Not the forced kind. The real one. Loud, messy, contagious. We'd go out for ice cream, and he'd tell me about math class like he was explaining a spy mission. He asked me to help build a model rocket for the science fair. For the first time in years, he felt like a kid again. But deep down, I knew what was coming. Andrea wasn't wired to accept loss. Not even temporary. She was going to come back swinging. She did it with an interview. A local mom podcast. Of course. She went on air with that grieving but dignified voice. Talked about how hard divorce was. How the system failed mothers. How she was fighting to protect her son from a toxic environment. She never used my name. Smart. But her lies were dressed in just enough truth to sound believable to someone who didn't know the full picture. Unfortunately for her, I did. I waited exactly 4 hours. Long enough for the episode to gain traction. Then I emailed the podcast host directly. Hi, Sandra. I'd love to come on and give the other side of the story. I believe your platform values balance and honesty. I've attached court transcripts and verified documents you may want to review before replying. I wasn't bluffing. I'd already prepared the file. Audio clips, custody filings, screenshots. I kept it all tidy. Labeled. Timestamped. The truth in a folder. She replied 12 minutes later. Would you be available for a call this afternoon? By that evening, the episode had been pulled. And 2 days after that, she aired a follow-up. This one, no guests. Just Sandra's voice, steady and clear. It's come to my attention that last week's episode included claims that are currently under legal investigation. I want to apologize to our audience for presenting a one-sided narrative. This platform does not condone misinformation. Andrea never got invited back. Turns out the truth does have a publicist, me. Meanwhile, the court was moving fast. A child psychologist was assigned to Lucas. I prepped him gently, told him it was like talking to a school counselor. No tests, no pressure, just someone who'd listen. He came back with drawings, stick figures of him, me, and our dog. His mom? Not in the picture. He didn't say anything bad about her, the psychologist told the court. But he didn't say much of anything at all. When asked about time at her house, he changed the subject. When prompted, he said, "I don't like being told to lie." That's significant. They say kids don't always have the words, but they feel. And when a child starts to associate silence with safety, you know something's gone very wrong. The next hearing came quicker than I expected. Less than a month since the last. I wore the same navy suit. No tie this time. I didn't need to impress anyone. I wasn't here to perform. I was here to finish the job. Andrea tried one last move. She requested the judge recuse himself. Conflict of interest, she claimed. Bias. The judge looked her dead in the eye and said, "Motion denied." I could have laughed. She was unraveling, and the whole court saw the threads. The ruling came at 2:46 p.m. Effective immediately, full custody is granted to Mr. Langford, pending permanent review. Mrs. Langford will be granted supervised visitation only, with sessions to be arranged through the court-approved agency. No applause. No celebration. Just the sound of Andrea breathing like the room had no air. She looked at me like I'd stolen something. But I didn't steal anything. I took back what was mine. And I did it without screaming, without threats, without stooping to her level. I used the truth. Slowly. Strategically. Like a scalpel, not a sword. Outside, Lucas gripped my hand. Tight. "Are we going home now?" he asked. "Yeah, buddy," I said. "We are." And we walked out, not just to the courthouse, but out of the story she tried to write. The one where I was the villain. And into ours. The one where the truth didn't need volume to be heard. It just needed proof. After the judge's ruling, things should have felt lighter. They didn't. Not right away. Sure, Lucas was safe now. I had full custody, supervised visitation was locked in, and the predator in her house was officially blacklisted from his life. But you don't walk away from a war zone and feel normal the next day. You stand there in the rubble, blinking in the sun, trying to remember what peace used to feel like. And then you realize it's not over. Because people like Andrea, they don't lose quietly. The first sign? She never showed up to the supervised visits. 3 sessions scheduled. 3 no-shows. No excuse. No message. No apology. Just radio silence. At first, Lucas was confused. Then he stopped asking. On the 4th no-show, I sat in the car with him, waiting outside the agency office, engine idling. He looked out the window and asked, "Is she coming?" I shook my head. And for the first time, he didn't cry. He just nodded. Like it confirmed something he'd already started to believe. "Can we get burgers instead?" So we did. And that was the moment I knew. She wasn't fighting for custody anymore. She was retreating, which meant one thing. She had something to lose. That night, I pulled out a flash drive. One I hadn't opened since the day the family imploded. It had everything: bank statements, emails, old text messages, screenshots. The stuff you keep even when it hurts, because someday it might matter. I started digging, not just for drama, for patterns. And there it was. For months before the divorce, Andrea started withdrawing large sums from our joint account. Not thousands, hundreds of thousands, disguised through the business account of her consulting firm. A firm that hadn't reported a dime of actual income in over a year. She always said she needed the account for her freelance coaching. But coaching who? Ghosts? The money didn't go to savings. Or her lawyer. Or Lucas. It disappeared. I checked her credit report next. Maxed out cards. Loans and deferment. Then came the worst part. A second mortgage I never signed, taken out in my name. Forged signature. Filed 3 weeks before she filed for divorce. She was planning this for a long time. The whole, he's unstable, routine? That wasn't protection. It was insurance. She needed custody because if I got full access, I'd start asking questions. Which meant it was time to start asking everyone. First stop, her old accountant. He picked up after the second ring. I introduced myself and said, politely, that I was conducting a financial review tied to a custody matter. I didn't need his help, just his silence. He didn't give me silence. He gave me a confession. She said the money was from a private client, he muttered. Said it was a political figure. She didn't want it reported. I backed out a few months ago when it got shady. I didn't press him. He'd already said enough. A political figure? That triggered something in my memory. 6 months before everything collapsed, Andrea started attending leadership conferences. Claimed she was working with a think tank. I asked for details. She changed the subject. Every time. So I kept digging. And finally, I found him. A name that had popped up in her emails several times. Derek Grayson. Consultant. Strategist. Former state Senate staffer. And married. With 3 kids. I cross-referenced flight bookings she made and found it. She traveled with him twice. First to D.C., then to Chicago. Business class. Same hotel. Same room number. So let me put it plainly. The man she trashed my name for? The man she tried to erase me in court for? The one she claimed was dangerous to Lucas? He was just a cover. The real danger? Was her. I passed everything to my lawyer. Every email. Every forged form. Every lie. She stared at the stack and said, "You want to press charges?" I didn't answer right away, because I wasn't sure. This wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about closure, about truth, and about the future Lucas was growing up in. He deserved to know that silence wasn't the same as surrender, that hiding behind someone else's chaos wasn't strength. So I looked my lawyer in the eye and said, "Yes, file everything." That night, I found Lucas asleep on the couch, his arms wrapped around a blanket he used to hate because Mom said it was ugly. Now he didn't care. It was soft. It was warm. It was his. I tucked it around him and sat there in the dark for a long time. Not because I was broken, but because I'd never felt this whole. The fraud report landed like a steel-toed boot in a glass house. My lawyer filed with the district attorney and attached every shred of proof. Forged mortgage documents. Falsified business expenses. The missing money trail from our joint account to offshore payment processors under shell corporations, one of which was conveniently registered to a P.O. box in Delaware. Andrea thought she was clever. She wasn't. She was just arrogant enough to think the rules never applied to her. But the DA? He lives for people like her. They opened a financial misconduct investigation within 10 business days. The same week, Lucas's guardian ad litem called me. She was breathless on the phone. "She's being audited." "I know," I said. "I filed it." A pause. Good. Andrea didn't call. Didn't email. But her social media? That cracked me up. 1 minute she was posting about healing and fresh starts. The next? Gone. Deleted. Wiped. It's amazing how fast someone goes quiet when the IRS starts asking for receipts. And guess who was the first rat to abandon ship? That politician she was seeing, Derek Grayson. I got an anonymous email, burner address, no name. But the attachments were gold. Screenshots. Conversations. Voice memos. Andrea. Don't act like this is just me. You knew what the money was for. Derek. I didn't know you were married. Andrea. I told you I was getting divorced. You think this life pays for itself? That little gem? I passed it straight to the DA. Turns out, you didn't like it either. I didn't need revenge. She was doing it to herself. By the time her second deposition came up, her new attorney was some green kid who looked like he printed his JD on an inkjet. She showed up in flats instead of heels. Makeup smeared. And not the artfully disheveled kind. I just learned I might be indicted kind. Meanwhile, I just sat there. No anger. No gloating. I was calm. Because here's the thing about watching someone lie for years. You stop waiting for the apology. You just want the consequences. Lucas still didn't know the full story. He just knew that Mom was busy a lot and that we were safe together. I didn't tell him about the audit. Not yet. I just focused on him. School lunches. Science fair. Saturday movie nights with popcorn and root beer. One night, out of nowhere, he looked up at me and said, "You don't yell anymore." I paused. Did I yell a lot before? No. But you always looked like you wanted to. That one hit me. Because he was right. Back then, I was drowning. In lies. In doubt. In second-guessing myself. But now, I was breathing. And my son could feel it, even if he didn't have the words. 2 weeks later, Andrea filed for emergency reconsideration of her custody arrangement. Her angle? That she was under undue stress and emotionally manipulated by external influences. Nice try. The judge asked if she had any new evidence. She said no. The motion was denied in under 3 minutes. The look on her face? That was the moment she finally realized something. I wasn't just winning. I'd already won. Not because I played dirty, but because I stopped playing her game entirely. And then came the letter. From the IRS. Not to me, to her. But I got a copy through Discovery. We have identified several discrepancies in your reported income and deductions over the past 3 fiscal years. Failure to cooperate may result in criminal charges. I printed it out, framed it, hung it in my office, right next to a picture of Lucas laughing in the backyard, squinting into the sun, mid-splash from the hose. Because that is what justice looks like. Not headlines, not handcuffs, but a child who sleeps easy. And a liar who can't. You know what the funny thing is about someone like Andrea? She didn't just want to win, she wanted to be seen winning. It was never about Lucas. It was never about co-parenting. And it sure as hell wasn't about love. It was about the image of triumph. The curated Instagram posts. The podcast appearances. The PDA brunches where she could smirk behind a mimosa and say things like, "It's just so hard doing everything on your own, you know?" Yeah, that's over now. It started with a whisper in her social circle. One of the moms from Lucas's old school, someone I barely knew, sent me a DM. "Hey, I heard about the court ruling. I always wondered if something was off. She was just so performative." Another message. Then another. Turns out, when your mask slips in front of a judge, it doesn't matter how many filters you use online. The truth bleeds. And Andrea? She was hemorrhaging. Word got out fast. The PDA president removed her from the board, pinning clarity on legal matters. Her favorite yoga studio canceled her membership, said they were restructuring. Translation? Get out. Even Derek Grayson, her dirty little politician boyfriend, made a statement through his office denying any inappropriate relationship and any knowledge of financial impropriety. He threw her under the bus before the indictment landed. Classy. Andrea tried to push back. A few soft pity posts. Something about growth through adversity. A black and white picture of her sipping tea with a quote about strength. But strength doesn't mean much when you're facing 3 felony counts and the IRS is combing through every luxury handbag and business dinner you wrote off over the last 4 years. I know, because I watched the hearing online. That's right. I sat there with popcorn in hand as the district attorney outlined every forgery, every false expense, every godforsaken wire transfer. Her lawyer looked like he wanted to crawl under the defense table and disappear. Andrea didn't cry. She didn't break down. She just sat there, shoulders tight, jaw locked, still trying to perform control. Still clinging to the delusion that if she looked untouchable, she could survive the hit. But the numbers don't lie. Documents don't lie. Children don't lie. Meanwhile, back in reality, Lucas was thriving. He laughed like a kid again. He asked to play soccer. Started drawing again. Told his teacher he wanted to be a pilot. We watched Saturday morning cartoons on the couch, him in his pajamas, me in yesterday's hoodie, both of us wrapped in the kind of silence that finally meant peace. No more courtroom waiting rooms. No more, "Don't worry, buddy, just one more visit." Just us. He didn't ask about her anymore. And I didn't offer. Not because I wanted to erase her. Because I didn't need to. She'd done that all on her own. The final blow came on a Wednesday afternoon. A certified letter arrived. I knew the seal before I opened it. Andrea's attorney. Inside, an official motion to relinquish all custody claims. Permanently. No trial. No negotiation. Just surrender. I read the last sentence 3 times. Client agrees to full termination of all parental rights in exchange for non-disclosure of financial findings obtained during joint discovery. Bingo. There it was. She didn't want to fight anymore, not because she learned her lesson, but because the truth was louder than her lies now. And she was the one with everything to lose. I signed the paper, sent it back the same day. But I didn't celebrate. I just sat down at the kitchen table, looked at the copy in front of me, and exhaled a breath I'd been holding for years. Not a victory lap. Not a revenge party. Just release. Because you can survive 1,000 cuts. You can hold your breath through the worst storm. But the real power is letting go once you're on the other side. Later that night, Lucas asked me if we could build a fort in the living room. Blankets, pillows, flashlights. We sat under there with snacks, telling dumb jokes and reading old comic books. At one point, he looked at me and said, "This is the best day ever." And that right there? That was justice. Not in the courtroom. Not in the audit. But right there, beneath a crooked blanket fort, with a boy who finally felt safe. After the custody surrender and the audit fallout, Andrea did what every collapsing tyrant does. She ran home. Back to her mother's house. Big place. Lots of glass. Even more denial. I remember it well. Spent enough holidays there being politely tolerated by people who thought software consultant meant underachiever with a laptop. Her mother, Judith, always wore pearls and pity. The kind of woman who mastered the art of smiling while insulting you. And her father? Checked out years ago. Preferred golf scores to hard conversations. They never liked me, but they loved Andrea, their golden girl, until she got caught dragging their family name through the mud, hand in hand with wire fraud and parental alienation. Word got around. Fast. Country clubs are faster than the internet when it comes to gossip. First came the board removals. Then the donor dinners stopped calling. Finally, Judith was asked to voluntarily resign from her foundation leadership role. You know the one, where she posed for charity galas and lectured about uplifting mothers in transition. The irony was almost poetic. And guess what? She blamed Andrea. I know because I got the email. Yes, she emailed me. Subject line, a conversation worth having. Against every instinct in my body, I opened it. I know we've never seen eye to eye, but I've always cared about Lucas. I want to talk. Without lawyers. That last part almost made me laugh out loud. The woman who once called me low tier at her daughter's baby shower was suddenly interested in diplomacy? Still. I agreed. Why? Because I needed to know what she knew. We met at a neutral coffee shop. She wore dark sunglasses like it was a CIA handoff. I came alone. No folder. No agenda. She spoke first. I didn't know about the money, she said, quiet but firm. Not until the subpoena started. I believe you, I said. Andrea doesn't share, she performs. Judith flinched, then nodded. She always thought the truth was negotiable, but I didn't think she'd drag Lucas into it. That's where I leaned in. Because for once, we were speaking the same language. You helped her, though, I said. You vouched for her. Backed her story. Every time she called me unstable, you were in the background nodding. She looked away, and that was answer enough. I'm sorry, she finally whispered, for not seeing it, for not stopping it. She wasn't crying, but her voice cracked. Just a little. I don't think she was sorry for me, or even for Lucas. She was sorry for herself, for the cost, for the collapse. But hey, regret's a start. Then she asked, do you think Lucas would ever want to see me again? That one sat with me. Because Lucas liked his grandma. Back when things were simple. Back when holidays weren't custody battlegrounds and his mom wasn't whispering poison in his ear. I didn't promise anything, but I didn't say no. I'll leave that up to him, I said. And I meant it. Because healing doesn't come from forcing connections, it comes from deserving them. Word spread through Andrea's family tree like wildfire. Cousins unfollowed her. Her aunt, an attorney in Atlanta, filed an ethics complaint over the forged mortgage. She had been one of Andrea's character witnesses during the first custody hearing. She sent me a letter. I believed her. I shouldn't have. I'm sorry. It didn't change the past, but it proved something. You can only lie for so long before even the people trained to defend you start walking away. And Andrea? She stayed silent. For once. No social posts. No emails. No teary voicemails. Just gone. Some people said she left the state. Others claimed she was in rehab, or therapy, or soul-searching in some overpriced retreat with healing crystals and goat yoga. I didn't care. Because the farther she ran, the closer we got to actual peace. One night, Lucas brought home a paper from school. A family tree project? I braced myself. Wasn't sure what he'd write. But when I looked at his diagram, I saw. Dad, Mom, crossed out. Grandma, Judith, maybe. Dog, Rocket, definitely family. I laughed harder than I had in months. Then I sat down next to him and asked, why maybe for Grandma? He shrugged. She was mean before, but now she's kinda sad. Like she knows she messed up. Smart kid. Smarter than either of his parents had been when they first brought him into this mess. That weekend, I took him to the zoo. We watched penguins waddle like drunk accountants and ate overpriced ice cream in the sun. At one point, Lucas leaned his head on my arm and said, I don't miss yelling anymore. I didn't say anything. Just put my hand on his head and let the silence speak. Because when the noise is gone and the truth is left standing, that's when healing begins. The email came from a friend. Subject line, have you seen this? Inside was a link to an upcoming streaming series, an online doka show. A platform known for its soft focus lighting and empowered healing tone. Think therapy meets influencer culture. Episode title. Surviving the System, One Mother's Fight to Reclaim Her Voice. Featured guest, Andrea Langford. My stomach turned. There it was. Her comeback. Not to Lucas. Not to the people she hurt. To the public. I clicked play on the trailer. 1 minute, 58 seconds of artful manipulation. She sat on a cream couch, perfectly lit. Her makeup soft. Her voice hushed. I was silenced. Accused. Painted as a monster. I lost my child to lies I couldn't disprove in time. Cue the piano. Cut to black and white footage of her staring out a window like a wartime widow. No mother should be punished for loving too much. That line? I almost spit out my coffee. She wasn't punished for loving too much. She was exposed for using her child as a shield while funneling money through shell companies and grooming him to believe I was the villain. But sure, cue the violins. The internet ate it up. Clips went viral. The show's comment section lit up. She's so brave. Men always win in court. It's disgusting. I bet the dad was abusive. I could have let it slide. I could have said, she's digging her own hole, just let her fall into it. But then I got a message. From Lucas's teacher. Just FYI, some of the parents at school are talking about the video. Lucas hasn't seen it yet, but I wanted to give you a heads up. That was it. She wasn't trying to clear her name anymore. She was targeting mine. Again. So I opened a document, cracked my knuckles, and wrote my own statement. Not to the world. Not to the algorithm. To Lucas. I recorded a video. Simple. Raw. No music. No edits. Just me. Sitting at his old desk. His dinosaur lamp behind me. I looked into the camera, and I told the truth. Everything. You might see your mother one day saying a lot of things. Telling a story. Some of it will sound true. Some of it will feel true. But I want you to know something. I didn't fight her. I fought for you. I didn't trash her. I didn't name call. I just documented. Timestamps. Screenshots. Court documents. The audio. The dates. The order. I ended it with this. You never have to choose sides, Lucas. You don't owe me loyalty. All I ask is that you grow up knowing the truth. Not the TV version. The real one. And if, someday, you want to ask me hard questions, I'll be right here. Always. I encrypted the file. Uploaded it.